Today, I'm going to share not one, but two deck profiles from somewhere around 2006 or 7. These are a bit special in the fact that they come from physical deck lists written by a couple of my rivals. The first one is much more competitive, but the second is more creative by miles. I can count on one hand the number of times I have won against the first deck as a kid. And after making the competitive overview videos relevant to the era, I understand why. Although a large part of the reason is my fixation on making big monsters, like the anime teaches, this deck is only a few tech cards off of a tier 1 cookie cutter staple deck from the time. The double XL Force and single breaker date the deck to September 2006 ban list, if I'm not mistaken, although the deck was for traditional format, hence the banned cards. On a side note, I had cards like Confiscation and the Forceful Sentry in my collection at the time, but the thought of playing them had never crossed my mind. Not because I thought hand disruption to be unchivalrous, as I do now, but because I did not understand the power of the cards. Also bear in mind that Imperial Order, Sangan, Sinister Serpent, and Witch of the Black Forest have had effect-changing errata to dramatically decrease their power level. So Sinister Serpent, for instance, could return from grave to hand each standby phase, and was excellent discard fodder for cards like Tribe Infecting Virus, or even as a tribute for the tech card The Creator. Speaking of which, this card does have to be hard tribute summoned in the deck, but can still be a tempo play when reviving a big monster from grave. The double Maneater Bug, double Exiled Force, and even the Old Vindictive Magician are all solid removal options for the time, although Old Vindictive Magician was more orthodox when run alongside Apprentice Magicians. The normal representation is also pretty strong, with Insect Knight, Gene Warped Warwolf, and Frostosterus as high attack point monsters. He only had one copy of Gene Warped Warwolf at the time, to explain the inclusion of the Insect Knight. Magical Mallet is a little odd, but it is good for boosting consistency. The Dust Tornado and Twin Twisters, no, not that one, in the side deck are because of the limitation of Mystical Space Typhoon at the time. The final tech for the main deck is Judgment of Anubis, which is a narrow counter trap with a discard cost, but can also destroy an opposing monster and even burn for damage. It is pretty spicy tech, especially when you compare it to the more generic 7 Tools of the Bandit in the side deck. Finally, the Ring of Defense is a little silly, with the obvious card to counter being Ring of Destruction, but the card can still hit a lot of popular burn cards for the time. This is just before Hanewata, which I anticipate would displace Rings of Defense in side decks. The deck could definitely be optimized in retrospect, but I see competitive potential for the time. Speaking of potential, the second deck has so much more room for improvement. Remember that this is a theme deck made from a limited collection, so don't be too hard in the comments. This is all in good fun, as it harkens back to the days when no one was overly concerned with card advantage or consistency, and fun was always the goal for any deck. The deck is centered around the Sacred Beasts, with a single copy of each. These monsters are sort of like the Egyptian god cards, but awkward. Each one takes 3 of a certain type of card to special summon themselves from hand, so I'm going to split the deck accordingly. Uriah is supported by Xingjin Hu, Ordeal of the Traveler, Spellbinding Circle, Call of the Haunted, Royal Decree, and in the side deck, Type 0 Magic Crusher, Robin Goblin, and Prepare to Strike Back. I think Xingjin Hu is broken, where your opponent can still chain the set card you target, if not directly, at least then by chaining around it with another Spell Speed 2 card. Ordeal of the Traveler is a good battle deterrent and can be annoying, perhaps a bit underrated for the time. Spellbinding Circle is not as good as Fiendish Chain or even Shadow Spell, but it can still prevent an attack before being used to bring out Uriah. Type 0 Magic Crusher is bad burn damage, but the card might be dangerous if we get a spell card that keeps returning from grave to hand. Robin Goblin is good, full stop. This card saw a little competitive experimentation in slow formats, and can gain value by depleting the opponent's hand. Then, Prepare to Strike Back has good artwork, but is too niche to be useful. Ravael is supported directly by Phantasmal Martyrs, but less obviously by Mask of Darkness, Malice Doll of Demise, Stray Asmodean, Element Soldier, which is weirdly a fiend, not a warrior, especially since we already have Element Doom. Dark Geroid, and Beige, Vanguard of the Dark World. And in the side deck, Wall of Illusion and Twin-Headed Wolf. There is that little combo with Malice Doll of Demise and Ectoplasmer like Arcana pulled off in the anime, which is cute. Stray Asmodean is Symmetric Burn, I guess. Blast Asmodean is the better card, and it has some potential in Chain Burn. Element Soldier is part of the Element Matter cycle, which is cool design since they gain effects based on the Aristotelian elements on the field, with each elemental monster having a different combination of effects. And Soldier benefits from the 2 main deck Hyper Hammerheads, then Mobius and Black Tyranno in the side deck. Dark Geroid is good, and so a little bit of meta play for getting over big monsters. Then Beige is great, but I don't think there is a card which discards monsters by effect. Lightning Vortex doesn't count, because it is a cost. Wall of Illusion is decent for bouncing a monster, and maybe more than one if it survives the battle. I wonder what happens if it is attacked by something other than a monster though. Twin-Headed Wolf is good effect suppression, but this deck does not look geared to be Fiend Beatdown. Then supporting Haman are Mass Driver, Branch, Dimensional Fissure, Ectoplasmer, Lighten the Load, non-spellcasting area, and in the side deck, 2-man Cell Battle, Shifting Shadows, and the oppressive Chain Energy. Mass Driver and Ectoplasmer can offer a little burn damage, but not much. Branch and non-spellcasting area / 2-man Cell Battle are actually useless without a fusion deck or any non-effect monsters in the main deck. Dimensional Fissure is just great, especially since the deck is not particularly graveyard focused. Lighten the Load is underrated and I think perfectly poised to be a skill card to help with consistency and tribute decks. Shifting Shadows is very flavorful, but not quite good. A lot of continuous spells and traps have this problem of being interesting, but not quite impactful enough to be worth a card in the deck. The mine for potential skill cards just keeps getting deeper. Then Chain Energy is meaningful damage, which puts your opponent into an annoying and potentially difficult situation to do anything. Just activating MST to destroy Chain Energy means that the card is as valuable as Hinotama and baited out premium spell and trap removal. This card could definitely cheese a win or two, but is not good for the health of the game. On to some of the tech cards, although the whole deck sort of looks like tech choices to me. Deathfrail Limp and Hidden Book of Spell, now known as Hidden Spellbook for the Prophecy archetype, are for recycling cards, even if they do not do it very efficiently, considering both tempo and card advantage. But back then, there was a bit of an unfounded fear of decking out. Hyper Hammerhead is bounce, but not as good as Wall of Illusion. Grandmal really power crept the card too. Wing Karibo is good, as I pointed out within the GX promo reviews. Then there is a full playset of Magical Mallet, which I have already mentioned, and I didn't realize this was in the deck when I picked out the theme for this year. 3 copies of Reload. Dying Keto Curemaster is healing and is alongside Swords of Revealing Light, Negate Attack, and the Wing Karibo to try to stay in the game just a little longer. Malfunction is not great since it is a -1 and does not even deal with the threat, just delaying it by a turn or two. Onto the side deck, where bizarrely some of the best cards are hiding. Black Tyranno is the first shiny card I remember pulling as a kid, but outside of my personal bias, the card is an interesting way to get around defense position monsters for some battle damage. Destiny Hero Dasher is so fun. This card is built for top decking a powerful card, and although telegraphed, is still exciting based on not knowing what is on the top of the deck at the moment. Ryoko is really strong, and I didn't realize this as a kid, but you don't have to use it to borrow strength from one of your monsters. Instead, you shrink an opponent's monster to boost yours, making the card pretty swingy. The Chthonian Polymer is decent against fusion monsters, and is pretty comfortable in the side deck. This might have ended up being a showcase of cool old cards that I happen to miss, more so than a deck profile, but I don't mind. It is definitely one which has gotten me feeling nostalgic, and a bit theory crafty on how I can fit Destiny Hero Dasher into my draft deck, as it has some synergy with Armageddon Knight and Dark Grepher, and I think that is one of the best things about Yu-Gi-Oh! Being a continuous game with a lack of set rotation. If you're lucky, some of your favorite cards might be improved dramatically by future support. Not necessarily enough to become competitive, but maybe a little more fun. And that might be all that matters.